Doing hard things is hard for a reason. It sucks. And if you don't let yourself be bored, you're never going to do the hard, important things. And life can very easily just pass you by, because you're going to be the type of person who says, I want to write a book. You're going to be the type of person who says, I want to go hiking more. You're going to be the type of person who says, I want to live a more conscionable, nourishing life. And then you're going to realize that that is actually hard work to do those things. And you're just going to sit on the couch and watch Netflix or pull out your phone and go on Instagram or twiddle your thumbs. And then you're going to get to the end of the day and you're going to feel that chasm in the heart and in the soul that hums at this very deep and low vibrational feeling that does not feel good. And that voice comes in and says, you are not who you say you are. And that's a problem. But it's a problem with a solution. Hello and good morning to my beautiful listeners, viewers, subscribers, people who find me at least somewhat entertaining. It's lovely to see you again back in the traditional stomping grounds. I just got back from Utah, from Moab not too long ago, and honestly, this trip was truly life-changing. It's everything that I needed it to be, that I wanted it to be, that I thought it might be, and more. Desert living was encapsulating and so beautiful that I honestly don't even have the words to describe it. But that's not what this video is for anyway. I would like to do a proper one of those in the future. But for now, I really want to talk to you about boredom. I'm going to drop this one in Ari's overshares, but the reality is this isn't truly oversharing. I think boredom is a topic that we all struggle with, at least to some degree. And I think being able to understand boredom and its role and ultimately like the treasures that are hidden beneath it is really critical to getting really heavy, important things done. But before we do that, I do want to start with a little bit of an introduction as to why I'm talking about boredom now and its role in my life and sort of where these realizations percolated from. And that does bring us back to Utah. Now, when I was out there alone and staying in this cabin and going on most of these experiences really solo outside of having a guide for some of the expeditions that I was on, I spent a lot of time by myself. I think most people would say that I actually do really well with alone time. Just telling people that I decided to fly to Utah, specifically the desert, for a week totally by myself has not necessarily taken a lot of people by surprise, but they're almost shocked by it. Like, how did you do that? And so you have to be the type of person to sort of be willing to sit in that at least a little bit. And I recognize that I am somebody who can do that, but I also think that's something that can be trained and worked on, or at least the discomfort can be reduced significantly the more that you practice it. But something sort of funny happened. I had a few concrete plans, but most of my days there, outside of the blocks of time where I knew that I was going to be doing something, were open. And I wondered if I was going to have too much free time. I didn't know if I was going to feel like I was relaxed or utilizing that free time effectively. My default here, when I'm bored or when I don't have things going on, is to instinctively pull out my phone. I've talked about this before. I've talked about the struggle about being in modern day and having access to technology that literally permeates everything that we do now. I have a love-hate relationship with digitalism and technology. On one hand, when I was sitting in my cabin, I was so grateful that it had electricity and I could flip on a light switch and not be sitting in the dark. On the other hand, everything is like Wi-Fi enabled now, and you don't really need to go far to be connected in some capacity to other people or other things going on in a digital sense. And while that makes communication maybe more effective or maybe more accessible, it doesn't necessarily make it more effective. And the more that we've expanded the reach of technology and digital infrastructure, we've also expanded a lot of like really easy distractors to life that if you're not like when you're in it, you don't realize how much of a time or an energy suck that can be. So while I was out in Utah, because I was so thoroughly enjoying that free time, I really didn't feel the impulse there to pull out my phone, to be on Instagram, to connect with people that oftentimes I do here in just sort of this like modern living. And that really was what allowed me to realize how important boredom is and how I've really sought to reduce it, to limit it as much as I possibly can in my normal day-to-day life by filling free time or open time with going on Instagram, either consciously or compulsively or reflexively, and watching YouTube videos and just doing all this other stuff that you could be filling with other much healthier, more conscionable choices, or you could be watching like good informative YouTube videos and things of that nature. So it really is up to you. And I recognize that also. But as I spent ample time alone in those moments, like when I'd come back from an adventure and I'd be hungry, I just wanted to sit in the kitchen of my hostel and make a meal. And I think it maybe started out of respect for other people, not wanting to just, have YouTube videos blasting on the counter. And then I'd kind of sit and I'd realize like, wait, the weather here is gorgeous. Let me go sit outside and eat this on the picnic table and taste the flavors and hear the silence that you get in the desert, even if you're in a relatively busy area. It was just so peaceful and so rich. And so I didn't feel the reflex to fill it with something because it felt perfect and nourishing and enough as it was. And the more time that I spent not distracting myself, the more time that I spent in that state of being bored, the more I started to realize things in my environment, within my own body, and ultimately the more aware and conscious I became of myself and the world and the natural beauty of the world and like all of this other stuff that in that environment was accessible and right there. But when I got back here, I realized that pattern pulls me out of like everything that I do. Here's what I've come to about being bored. As I came back to my normal life here and I tried to just assimilate back to normal society where my days haven't been filled with climbing mountains or rafting the Colorado River and getting lost in national parks, I have tried really intently to preserve as much of my presence and peace of mind and clarity that I had out there over here, even though the worlds are totally different and it is in many ways a lot more challenging. I just loved how I felt out there so much that I came back really consciously trying to get my footing and foundation right here and say, how can I recreate that? Obviously, I don't have the same landscape and maybe the same accessibility of fun things and outdoor activities and people around who just want to be like me in that sense, but I wanted to recreate it as much as I possibly could and keep this patterning for as long as I possibly can, despite the fact that it has only been a few days and it is way too premature to assume that I'm going to be able to maintain this indefinitely or permanently. Being in the boredom state has changed my life. It has already saved my life. You see, there is plenty of stuff that is really good for us to do, really important for us to do, and some of that stuff feels really good to do, and some of that stuff doesn't feel really good to do. And whether it feels good or it doesn't, you can't get around the fact that there are really important things that we need to do that are hard. And you can't get around the feeling of it being hard because your body and your brain does not want to do hard things. It doesn't like the resistance that's inherent in doing hard things. It doesn't like friction. And so when you kind of move through your day and you have a 5 or 10 minute gap of time, it doesn't want you to sit and meditate. It doesn't want you to just lay on the couch and put your palms up in the air and say, I'm just going to sit here for 5 minutes and sort of see what happens. No, it's so much easier. It's so much more accessible to just pull out your phone and go to Instagram and start doom scrolling or get a dopamine hit because you see something that makes you laugh and then you want more of that. And the danger, the toxicity is precisely in its effortlessness, because it's so effortless to not have to be bored anymore. And that boredom has the answers to doing the hard things that make life worth living. Taxes are a great example of something that so often people will procrastinate or put off because it's a hard, important thing to do and they don't want to do it. It doesn't need to be taxes. Think of your version right now in your own personal hell of what the taxes of your life are. Maybe it's going to the grocery store. Maybe it's folding the laundry that you pulled out of the dryer 3 days ago, like I have. Maybe it's calling a loved one who you just don't really feel like dialing the number and getting into it, even though you know if you just rip the Band-Aid, it'll be 7 minutes of a call and then it's off your plate and it's off your mind and off your chest. There are hard things that we don't want to do. And in the moments when we have our boredom, at least for me personally, I'll have those things kind of percolate up. And I'll be like, all right, great, free time. Maybe we should do those things now. And there's such a resistance, there's such an avoidance of that friction that just the energetic cost of thinking about it, of trying to get over that hump is sometimes so high that I just flip. And I'm like, for 5 minutes, I'd be so much more effective on Instagram for 5 minutes because my dopamine's going to go up and I can ingest so much information and I'll laugh and maybe someone messaged me and that just sounds so much more exciting, and so I go right there. But when I have avoided or told myself hard no, you have to be bored, the reality is sitting in that suck is just so annoying that your brain will just want to do literally anything but sit there in that suck. And so I've noticed over the course of the last few days, if I just sit in that boredom for a couple minutes, or I refuse to listen to the urge to answer for that dopamine and pull out Instagram, and I'm just sitting on my couch, I'm like, well, what can I do? And then I start to look around my apartment, and then I see the boxes for the things that I ordered that need to be returned. And I'm like, well, if my choice or my options are to either sit here for 10 minutes and twiddle my thumbs or move, my body feels way better just moving and getting shit done. And so I've been doing the hard, important things that I don't want to be doing because they feel better than doing nothing. And that's the key. That's how boredom is going to save your life, because getting in those states where you are forcing yourself to just be bored will create the space for you to finally do the things that you've been putting off for probably way too long and without any remotely good enough excuse. And this doesn't just go to the hard, important things that I don't want to do or that don't make me necessarily feel good to be doing. Yay, I'm packing boxes. That's amazing. It also goes towards the important things that I do want to do. Because they're still so hard, I find myself avoiding them. All right, case in point, let's just get right to it. It's writing the book. I started earlier this year to write in free pockets of time and not put pressure on myself, and I was just trying to make it accessible. And when I was out in Utah and I had my downtime and I was just really getting deep into my soul and asking myself, really, what is my personal blueprint for living an enjoyable life and a life that feels honorable to me, who am I at my core, I realized a few things about who I am at my core. I'm somebody who thrives in extreme adventure. I've never really seen myself as an adrenaline junkie, but after spending a week of doing the craziest things and in a wild culmination going for a tandem base jump, which is so far outside of my comfort zone, I came back from that trip and I was like, if I could do all that in a week, I must really like adrenaline. I must really like adventure. So I realized that's an important part of me. And writing is something that I know that I'm here to do. And so why am I not writing consistently, frequently, daily? Like, why am I not doing it? It's because it's really hard. Nothing in my life has been honestly harder than just trying to sit down and chip away at stories and aspects of my memoir, because there's so much raw emotion there, and it's so challenging to just sit there and breathe and let it come over me and write. I actually end a lot of these writing bouts starving because I'm burning so many calories just concentrating so hard in my brain that I'm just ravenous. It rivals going for a run for me. I'm not even going to lie to you. Now that I've been writing more frequently, I'm just inhaling food. It's insane. But the thing about reducing like the frequency of the times that I'll let myself just go to Instagram or something that's easier, it's something that gives me that quick dopamine hit, is that I now have the space and the accessibility to do the hard, important things that do make me feel good. And they're not any less challenging. They're still really hard. But because I've told myself it's a hard no, like you got to be bored and you got to do this thing, and that's important to you, so just get it done. Because I don't give myself a gray area, or I haven't been giving myself a gray area, it's been being done. It's been getting done. And that makes me feel really, really good. But that wouldn't be happening for me if every time I was like, okay, cool, you have a free hour, let's go to the library and sit and just try to write for an hour. I just let myself sit on the couch and twiddle my thumbs and was like, Instagram. Because after 5 minutes on Instagram, I've gotten such a dopamine hit and my heart rate's gone up and I'm active, and I've been laughing that pulling away from that is A, really hard, and then B, it makes the fall down into something hard and requiring a lot of concentration power and a lot of effort for maybe not a ton of output that's at least visible, right? Like I might sit down for an hour and write, if I'm lucky, a page, but honestly it could be 4 or 5 sentences. That's not super fun necessarily. It feels extremely rewarding at the end, but the concept to walking there, to pulling the laptop out, to beginning, to being in the feelings of doing that, none of that feels really good. I only feel good at the very end, but Instagram is just right there, and so you get the point. So what have I been doing? I said it already countless times in this video, but I'm not letting myself pull out Instagram to scroll anymore. I'll watch maybe the stories of my closest friends that pop up there if I really am in a bind and I'm like, okay, let's pull out Instagram for a couple minutes. YouTube, I have been trying really hard to watch things that are informative to me and teach me a thing or two. And actually now I'll give you examples. I've gotten really into espresso because I, by myself, with my own 2 hands, made my first ever espresso on a commercial espresso machine that was fully manual in Moab. And that's a full story that deserves its own spotlight. But that I grew fascinated by the concept of coffee and what makes coffee good. And so I've been, when I'm bored, if I can't sit in that boredom, pulling out YouTube, and I found this guy, James Hoffman, who makes videos on espresso and coffee. And so now I know what makes different coffees taste different, how to brew a good AeroPress coffee. I started weighing the beans that I put in my grinder instead of just winging it. And so I'm tasting the coffee and I'm expanding my worldview and I'm learning. And I applied for a credit card, and I've been watching videos of people who are full-time van lifers, and I'm trying to nourish myself and utilize this time in a way that serves me because, again, being bored is really hard and it's not something that any of us want to do. So if I'm not going to let myself have the quick, easy hits of dopamine, then I'm going to, for the sake of not being bored, choose to learn and choose to write and choose to do the hard things that I know intelligibly are important to me and that matter to me. But because they're so hard, I oftentimes just don't do them. And so I am learning how to do the hard, important things that feel good and don't feel good. And the answer to doing that, despite whether or not you want to hear it, is boredom. Let's be honest. We're always going to want to procrastinate the things that suck, the things that are hard, even if we know that they're important. And even if we know at the end of the day, if I do that thing, I'm going to feel really good about myself. I'm going to feel really good about who I am. Doing hard things is hard for a reason. It sucks. And if you don't let yourself be bored, you're never going to do the hard, important things. And life can very easily just pass you by because you're going to be the type of person who says, I want to write a book. You're going to be the type of person who says, I want to go hiking more. You're going to be the type of person who says, I want to live a more conscionable, nourishing life. And then you're going to realize that that is actually hard work to do those things. And you're just going to sit on the couch and watch Netflix or pull out your phone and go on Instagram or twiddle your thumbs. And then you're going to get to the end of the day and you're going to feel that chasm in the heart and in the soul that hums at this very deep and low vibrational feeling that does not feel good. And that voice comes in and says, you are not who you say you are. And that's a problem. But it's a problem with a solution. Let yourself be bored. Do it. Just sit in the suck. Try to put limitations on yourself like a little kid, and you will start to live a life that is more in tune with the one that you think that you want. Good news, if you end up not liking those choices, no one's marrying you to them. You're not locked in to who you say you think you want to be. Start trying it. You don't like it, you figure something else out. But the answer is definitely not to distract yourself. That is the antithesis of anything that's going to help you out. With that being said, I'm going to wrap up the video here. I love you. Thank you so much for being here and spending conscious time with me behind the camera. I truly appreciate you, and I cannot wait to tell you about as many of the stories as I possibly can communicate in upcoming videos about Moab and the beauty of that place. And I will be back, which is incredible. But for now, I will enjoy my Moab Coffee Roasters coffee, which I'm loving so much that it's almost done. But it's black. You can't even see it. Didn't even add cream to it. I'm going to taste that because I'm not letting myself go on Instagram and be all, entertained. And I'm going to just make breakfast and actually go return something because it's my lunchtime now. And I need to get that off my desk. I'm going to come back and get some work done, and then I'm going to go write tonight. So I love you. I hope this was helpful to you. Get a little bored, and you might just change your life. You might just save it. Bye.